just fun because Maslow's obviously a great thinker and has done a lot for sociology and our understanding of human nature. But I like to say he was just wrong. I think it's fun to say he's wrong,
Okay.
you know? Um,
Hey there, and welcome to a brand new episode of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hasseman, and joining me today is a brand new rock star, and he is roughing it. He's in Tokyo, so it's like 2 in the morning there for him. So I really appreciate him taking the time. He's a marketing expert, he's an entrepreneur, he's the founder of Relative, Cairo Marsh. Thanks for joining me, man.
Kirby, thanks for having me. And even though it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I consider myself fortunate to be a part of your program right now. So thank you.
Oh man, yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you doing it. And so let's dive in. I've seen you talk about relationship-nomics, which I thought was a great term. Can you talk about that in relation to the value of brands?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the principle of relationship-nomics is really around the economics of relationships, right? And I think when we think about marketing, we think about relationships, and we think about how brands come into play. And it seems like a nice, squishy, nice to have a good relationship. But what are the economics that drive that? What are the underpinning factors that people can actually benefit from? And the way that we tend to look at the economics of relationships is how do you better monetize longer term value? How do you get people to convert faster because there's greater trust and relevance? And how do you then use them to create a sense of advocacy along the way? So it's really about building a paradigm to say, okay, what are the revenue that I want to earn along this customer relationship, and then planning the system to deliver that.
Yeah, I love how you kind of like so you take sort of like you said a soft term, but it turns it into the data of it, and I think there's a lot of value in that. So that makes a lot of sense. In addition to that, there's just so much conversation around the value of customer engagement. So can you talk about that and the future of personalized marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's undoubtedly engagement is the jewel, right? When you're doing marketing, you want to pull people in, you want to engage them. It's critical to success. But one of the things that I think that we really need to consider is that as we look at how the industry is moving, a lot of engagements being driven now by a lot of automation techniques, a lot of automation technology, the ability to use AI to scale and hyper target and be hyper relevant to individuals, which I think is great and I think it's powerful. The challenge that we also see in that, though, is that as we all leverage these capabilities, one of the key differences or differentiating or opportunity makers we see in engagement is automation. So the ability to, is authenticity. So the ability to balance automation and efficiency and hyper relevance with authenticity for what the brand or the business stands for, and to be able to reach and connect an individual base at a human basis is really, really critical. So one of the things we really try to do, and when we guide our clients, is to help them understand, where do I automate, where do I drive efficiency, and where do I stand out. And part of that's looking at what we would call sort of key moments, right? So you may have certain moments in terms of the engagement process. If you map out your engagement journey with consumers, where here are the key places we need to be efficient, automated, but here are the places where we need to take a step back and make a difference. And that's the authenticity moments. And I think it's really important to factor that in to really drive sustainable engagement.
Man, I think that's really smart, Cairo. And it's the thing I struggle with because I want to utilize all the automation, all the technology that it makes sense, but you don't want to lose sight of your heart and soul. And I think that, yeah, I think that's something that we're all kind of struggling with. But I like the way that you're talking about mapping it out. So you go, okay, these are the areas where I have to be the most human and authentic. I think that's really good advice. So, um, how can we use customer experience? Again, that's another term I hear a lot of. How do we use customer experience design to build that lasting loyalty?
Well, so I think the first part is that, and this is something that I think a lot of brands don't do well enough, is really define what is their customer experience. What is the experience that they want to offer that's unique to them? Think about this. I think your brand or your business is as individual as you are. how do you present? How do you show up in the world? What's your personality? I think that defines the experience to a certain degree, and that may be around quality, it may be around security, it may be around safety, maybe around humor, or being a personal person. But I think once you start to define that experience and who you are, then it's how do you deliver that, and where do you bring that to life at relevant touch points. For example, it may make sense to be humorous at the initial stages, but not so much at points of customer service, obviously. But understanding those sort of key points. But I think that what drives, let me change that. Actually, let me change my answer a little bit. So I think that's 100% true. That's 100% true around customer experience and planning that out and delivering that appropriately. But I would also say that doesn't ultimately drive loyalty, in my opinion. Like I think having the right customer experience is right, so people have a sense of who you are, what to expect from you, so they create a degree of trust. But ultimately, what I personally feel and what I try to guide our clients on in terms of what drives loyalty is how loyal are you to your audience? How do you perceive? How do they perceive how loyal you are to them? One of the key points is about reciprocity. I think what brands and businesses want, I think, is less so a amorphous sense of loyalty, whether that's measured by NPS score or some other metric. What you really want are customers to feel a need to reciprocate value back to you. And the way that you do that is, but you create a sense of debt to a certain degree in the consumer's mind. Where most people, I want to give back. These guys have treated me great. I've got to treat them great. So ultimately, within your experience framework, it's not just about your touch points and what you do and how you present, and being contextual. Ultimately, to drive loyalty is figuring out how you create that sense of reciprocity, and how do you create that sense of, to the consumer, that it's worth investing back in you as a brand.
Yeah, I like that because there's ways that they can do that. Obviously, they can buy from you again. They can get referrals. They can help you. They can advocate for you. All that sort of thing. That's interesting as a way to measure sort of that actual loyalty. And again, back to that first thing you talked about, relationship-nomics, right? Like it puts a metric behind. Yeah, I think that's really good. Okay, so final question for you, Cairo. Most of us have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Um, can you talk about or discuss this in a business setting and where like relationships sort of fall in that pyramid?
No, absolutely. And like, this sounds harsh. I like to say it because it's just fun, because Maslow's obviously a great thinker, and has done a lot for sociology and our understanding of human nature. But I like to say he was just wrong, because it's fun to say he's wrong,
Okay.
you know? Because, Maslow places relationships, for example, I think at the third level. Maslow's hierarchy of needs starts with basic physical needs, right?
Right.
Like the ability to survive, the food, sex, shelter. But I think the reality is, for human beings, you can't get food, sex, or shelter unless you belong.
Right.
Like we don't function as human beings, as individuals. We're horribly useless individual animals.
Mm,
We're great in a team. Like, we're
yeah,
unstoppable in a team, but horribly useless animals, as individuals.
that's
And I
interesting.
think that, when we think about it in a business context, I think that this is so powerful a motivation, particularly if you think about how, I think in today's society, where we have more what I would call technical intervention, where we're talking through screens, where we're not as close together, where people feel a greater gap of loneliness, tapping into that sense of belonging to something, which is fundamental to, I think, human survival, I think is a powerful lever for brands to be able to use and businesses to be able to use.
Yeah, I've often heard people say that we were not meant to do life alone, and we've seen that really, through the pandemic and how there's a raise in anxiety and loneliness and all those sort of things. So I think what you're saying is exactly right. That's really, and tapping into that can be powerful. So this has been great, Cairo. Where can people learn more, connect with you, learn more about you?
Yeah, well, you can find us on our website, which is at relative.com, relative, no E,
Hmm.
dot com.
Yep.
You can also find me and our company on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to talk more if anyone has any interest.
That's awesome. Cairo, I really appreciate you taking the time. We'll have to do it again sometime. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Kirby. Appreciate it.
You bet. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll see you next time. Marketing Joy.